The days blend together in the quiet mansion where I live. My name is Lady Victoria, and at 66, I find myself alone since Sir Edward's death. The house echoes with memories, each room holding fragments of a life I once shared. Don't forget to subscribe to Bold Confessions because the truth only gets darker from here. The marble floors that once hosted grand soirees now only carry the sound of my solitary footsteps. Theo entered my life during the depths of winter, a housekeeper in his early 30s, recommended by my longtime friend Lady Margaret. His first day, he arrived precisely at 8, his black coat dusted with snow, eyes clear and confident. Something in his manner caught my attention immediately, perhaps it was the gentle authority in his voice or the graceful efficiency of his movements. He carried himself with quiet dignity, different from the usual domestic staff who seemed to fade into the wallpaper. Our first meaningful interaction came unexpectedly during his second week. I was attempting to retrieve a box of Edward's old photographs from a high shelf, determined to finally sort through them. "Lady Victoria, can I help you with that?" Theo's voice startled me. When I turned, he stood closer than I expected, close enough that I caught the faint scent of his cologne. My pulse quickened, a sensation I hadn't felt in years. I declined his help, but his lingering gaze suggested something unspoken passing between us. As winter melted into spring, I found myself inventing reasons to seek his company. What began as simple requests, help with the garden, assistance with rearranging furniture, evolved into longer interactions. I asked him to join me for afternoon tea, ostensibly to discuss household matters. He would sit across from me in the conservatory, sunlight catching the silver threads in his dark hair, and we'd talk about everything except the house. Theo spoke of his dreams of traveling to Japan, his love for classical music, and his sister's children whom he clearly adored. I shared stories of my youth in Cornwall, my passion for watercolor painting, and gradually, the lonely years after Edward's death. During these conversations, I noticed small details that I tried to ignore, the elegant strength of his hands as he poured tea, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how he always seemed to anticipate my needs before I voiced them. One evening in late spring, I found him in the music room, running a dust cloth over the grand piano. He didn't notice me at first, and I allowed myself a moment to observe him. The setting sun painted him in gold, highlighting the fluid grace of his movements. When he turned and caught me watching, the air between us seemed to crystallize. Heat rushed to my face as I fumbled for an excuse about checking windows for drafts. His knowing look followed me as I retreated, my heart racing with equal parts mortification and exhilaration. That weekend, I took an unprecedented step and invited him to dinner. Not in the kitchen where he usually ate, but in the formal dining room. I told myself it was merely to discuss the upcoming garden renovation, but we both knew it was more. As we sat across the mahogany table, crystal glasses catching the candlelight, our conversation deepened. I spoke of my fears of irrelevance, the hollow echo of my social life, and the emptiness that wealth couldn't fill. Theo listened with such intensity that I found myself voicing thoughts I'd never dared speak aloud. "Sometimes," I said, tracing the rim of my wineglass, "I wondered if there's more to life than this endless routine. Maybe I need something more than just polite company." His silence felt heavy with understanding, his dark eyes holding mine across the flickering candles. After that night, subtle changes crept into our interactions. His hand would linger when helping me with my coat, our fingers would brush as we arranged flowers for the dining room, and we'd find ourselves standing too close while discussing household matters. Each moment carried the weight of unspoken desires, though we maintained the pretense of propriety. The breaking point arrived on a stormy evening in June. The day had been particularly difficult, the anniversary of Edward's death, and I found myself overwhelmed by memories and regrets. Theo found me in the library, tears streaking my face. Without hesitation, he sat beside me on the leather sofa, his hand warm and steady on my shoulder. The comfort of human touch after so long broke something inside me. I turned and pressed my lips to his cheek, letting them linger for a heartbeat too long. I felt his sharp intake of breath, the sudden tension in his body. When I pulled back, his expression was unreadable, and my stammered apology fell into uncomfortable silence. Desperate to clear the air, I suggested meeting at the local pub the following evening, neutral ground where we might speak freely. Over gin and tonics, I finally confessed. "I feel something for you, Theo. Something I can't control, something that frightens and thrills me in equal measure." His face showed conflict rather than surprise. "Lady Victoria," he responded carefully, his fingers tightening around his glass, "I don't know if we should explore this path. Some lines, once crossed, can never be redrawn. But fate had other plans. During what was meant to be a clarifying conversation at the house, our carefully maintained restraint finally shattered. One moment we were discussing his future at the estate, the next, our lips met in a desperate kiss. It was everything I'd imagined and nothing I was prepared for. The reality of what we'd done crashed back instantly, Theo's horrified expression matching my own sudden shame. The following morning brought unbearable tension. We moved through our routines like actors in a play, the weight of our actions hanging heavy between us. By afternoon, Theo appeared at my study door with resignation etched on his face. "I can't stay," he said simply, his voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't something we can ignore or pretend away." I watched him pack his belongings that evening, each movement deliberate and final. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? At the threshold, he turned back one last time, his eyes soft with something like regret. "Goodbye, Lady Victoria." The door closed with devastating finality, leaving me alone with the consequences of my actions. Now, sitting in my empty home as summer fades into autumn, I understand how easily emotions can consume us, how a moment of weakness can alter lives forever. We have the power to stop ourselves, to recognize when we're compromising our integrity for temporary comfort. Sometimes the hardest lesson is learning when to let go, even when our hearts beg us to hold on. The mansion feels different now, not just empty, but cleansed. Perhaps some desires are better left unexplored, some doors better left closed. Yet I can't bring myself to regret the brief moment when I felt truly alive again, even as I accept the price I paid for that feeling. Bold Confessions presents The Price of Desire. Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more tales of love, betrayal, and redemption.